Hello, this is Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's class, we will be continuing from the previous video. If you haven't watched that video already, I'm putting the link in the description box. Do watch that part, at least the introduction, then you'll understand what I'm doing in this video. Today, I'll not be explaining what I'm doing, I'm just going to continue from the past video. Okay, so the next question is Santhe is conducting a study to investigate whether there is a correlation between how funny a person finds jokes and how much activity there is in a particular region of the brain. She plans to measure brain activity using a brain scan. Suggest one way that Santhe could measure how funny a participant thinks each joke is. Here the answer the student has given is she can prepare a rating scale from 1 to 10, 1 being least funny and 10 being the most funny. This is a very good answer. She has identified a correct technique which is self-report. In fact, she has been as specific as to say that the self-report should be a rating scale. And as I always insist in my classes, when you give a rating scale, you must say what the end points stand for. So what the least rating means on that rating scale, what the least number translates to, and what the most number means, what the highest number translates to. So she's done all of that. Next is Santhe finds a correlation in her study. Explain one type of correlation that Santhe could have found using the variables she is measuring. Okay, so the variables were how funny the person finds the joke and the activity in brain region. In these type of questions where they ask you to suggest one type and they're not telling you exactly which, like positive, negative or zero, definitely you are free to choose any. There is no particular right or wrong answer in these type of questions. It's just a matter of are you able to explain correctly or not. So here the student says when the joke is rated more on the scale of funniness, that means the rating scale she's given, she's referring to that, the brain activity also increases. Therefore, she observes positive correlation between how funny and how much activity in the brain region. Here the student has identified and explicitly named the type of correlation positive. That's a very good thing. Secondly, she's elaborated on what a positive correlation is by naming the variables. In fact, she's operationally given the variable that she's given in operational terms in the last answer, so that is also good. And she's named the other variable as well. She's used the correct terminology for a positive correlation, more this, more that way. So that's why she scores full 3 marks for this. Again, this is a really good answer. Next is Santhe also plans to investigate whether there is a correlation between activity in the same part of the brain and sad stimuli rather than funny ones. Explain one ethical problem with Santhe's new study that she did not have in the original study. Now here what is there? The main thing is not to confuse between methodological and ethical issues. So here if you say it would be difficult to present sad stimuli, it would be difficult to think about which stimuli would be sad or to find the sad stimuli to present. All those are methodological issues, having some problem in creating the procedure. Ethical means you refer to one of the ethical guidelines and you elaborate a little on it. So here you can see in the student's answer she mentions that protection from psychological harm is the guideline which will get violated. Why? She explains that also because sad stimuli can have negative impact on participants' mental health. That is why. You could also explain it in the sense people would feel distressed, upset, or become sad themselves upon looking at the sad stimuli. Any way that you explain, the important thing is one, name the guideline. Second, explicitly show how it gets broken if the sad stimuli are shown. Next is Robin is using a questionnaire to investigate the use of social media by 13 to 14-year-old children. Suggest one question that Robin could use to collect qualitative data. Now here the student says which social media app you spent most of time in. Actually, these type of answers are very scoring, open and closed questions. One of the easiest type of answers. Still, students make a mistake by confusing between open and closed questions. Which will never be an open question? Why I'm saying open question here? Because they've said qualitative data. Qualitative data is collected through open questions, not through closed. Okay, which makes for a very limited response. Like always I insist on this: when you write a question, open or closed, ask it to yourself after writing. Means in your mind think how I would answer this question. So if someone was to ask you which social media app you spend most of your time in, wouldn't you answer in one word? Maybe you'd say Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. You won't elaborate because you haven't been asked to elaborate. So where will the qualitative data come from? Which is going to be naming one app. Typical openings for open questions, the ones which collect qualitative or free data, is what, how, not how many or how much, just how, why, explain, describe, elaborate. Think of your essay questions in your paper. How they ask you, they begin like this, right? Explain, elaborate, those type of things, discuss. Okay, so the question could be something like, please explain your use of social media. Or if you want to be more specific, please explain why you use a certain app on social media, something like that. Next is, when the children answer the questions, they might tell lies instead of telling the truth. Explain why the children telling lies would be a problem for validity of the results. Very specific question. They want to know exactly why it would be a problem for validity. Lies will cause false data to be recorded as no result, causing invalidity. This is one very superficial understanding, very generic, not made relevant to the scenario, not contextualized at all. Second, this use of psychological terminology is poor in this answer because false data will be recorded and all, no clarity. Anytime any type of confounding is hinted at, like people are lying, is a type of confounding. Always you have to talk in terms of independent variable, dependent variable, extraneous variable. That is good use of terminology. So if children are telling lies, the problem would be she wants to investigate use of social media, that she will not be able to uncover. The independent variable, actually it's not an experiment, but what is causative according to her of children's behavior, use of social media, that she will not be able to understand because they are lying. So Robin. One more thing is, this is one reason why you should use the names also which are given in the scenario. When you use the name, like you say Xanthe or Robin in your answer, it reminds you that you must use wording from the answer. That's why so it's helpful. So Robin will not be able to gauge the impact of social media on the behavior of children if they lie. That is why results would be invalid. Here you can mention that it would result in false data. That is why. Okay, so that is how it has to be explained. Next is, suggest one way Robin could reduce the problem of children telling lies. So here they are asking for a solution. So the student says Robin can deceive the children by giving a false aim and by giving filler questions in between. She can hide the aim of the study. Again, generic, no reference to the study at all, and 2 points are taken. Firstly, saying someone could deceive someone. That effect of that language, I'm not saying they'll cut your marks for it, but it's not good. It sounds as if deliberately she wants to deceive or mislead the children. There are better ways of putting it. So she could hide the true purpose of the study would be the better way of putting it. And then there should be an example of what purpose she should give instead. Because of course something she has to tell the participants why she's doing the study. So if she's not going to tell them it's to investigate their social media use, then what is she going to tell them about? That is contextualizing it and giving an example for elaboration. Instead of just moving to another point altogether, filler question. One is to do with purpose, one is to do with filler. Neither point is complete. When they've asked for one way, why are two ways given? This is the problem. Always sacrificing depth for breadth. Can't emphasize on this enough. Otherwise, take the point of filler question and give example of what filler questions would be there, or just say how many would be there. Stick to one point. Why introduce 2 points and leave both incomplete or leave both very generalized? Okay, so she could give a false purpose of this study. Instead of telling them per se that it is about their use of social media at their age, she could just tell them it is a study looking at the popularity of social media. Or she could say it is a study being conducted by social media platforms to check how much the youth is interested in them. Something like that. Next is Robin wants to use a wide range of children in his sample. Suggest how he could obtain a wide range of sampling of children in his sample. Definitely how sample could be collected anytime has to do with sampling technique, and the student has done the right thing by identifying a sampling technique. In our syllabus there are 3 sampling techniques: random, opportunity and volunteer. There are other sampling techniques in psychology, definitely snowball sampling and all. Why I'm mentioning this is recently some student brought up that in the mark sheet, one of the latest mark schemes, they've mentioned snowball sampling somewhere. Maybe for this answer only, I don't remember which it was. So do we have to write that? No, you don't have to write that, and you don't have to learn that. It's not in the syllabus. You can. It's correct. They'll give you credit for it. But I would insist against that. I would insist you stick to what is given in your syllabus and phrase your answers accordingly. So in your syllabus, because they have given these 3 sampling techniques which I just mentioned, just try to write out of those. Now, he can use random sampling from 3 different schools and use a large sample. Firstly, when they say how a sample, then just stick to sampling technique. Don't switch over to characteristics of the sample. Large sample is a characteristic. And if at all you want to talk about characteristic instead of technique, okay, that's acceptable, but then just stick to collecting a large sample and then explain that a large sample is bound to have more diversity. Again, this is a question of breadth and depth. Taking 2 suggestions when it's just for 2 marks, although here they've not said give 1 suggestion, it's understood. You have to give 1. How much can you give for 2 marks? So take 1 and elaborate on that instead of taking 2 different ones and leaving both incomplete and uncontextualized. So the student has mentioned random sampling, then because it's a how question, she should specify, of course only for 2 marks, but the steps in collecting the random sample. So like she has said 3 schools, so he should collect the population list from 3 schools. And then using a lottery method, select a number of children for his sample. It's for 2 marks, so I'm not elaborating on the lottery method. A lot of time random sampling questions come for 3 or 4 marks, then we can elaborate on putting chits in the bowl, for folding them, shuffling them, drawing them, those type of things. Here it's sufficient to say that lottery method could be used. So for this answer and the previous one, similarities both, there is breadth but not depth, so only 1 mark will be scored. Next is explain why it is important for Robin to have a wide range of children. Comes to the strength of the sample if it is large and diverse. Why it will be a strength is generalizability is right, but again no contextualization, so 1 mark. What generalizability? What will get generalized better if Robin is taking a wide range of children? So generalizability about use of social media. How 13 to 14-year-olds use social media. Those results will be more generalizable to whom? Again incomplete. Whom? the population of 13 to 14-year-olds to them. Okay, like that it has to be written properly. Always show your understanding, not your general knowledge or information that you have gathered. Okay, coming to the last question in this video, because the designer study I'll take separately. Yuan is planning a study to investigate attitudes to mental health. He will use an interview. Suggest one closed question that Yuan could use to collect data about attitudes to mental health. Because this is the specimen paper, repetitive type of questions are there, nevertheless very good for practice. So one closed question she has given is, more importance should be given to mental health, yes or no? I'm giving this 1 mark, it's correct, it's a fixed choice, yes or no answer, definitely. Closed because it is limited response. But the phrasing actually is not correct. You should give it in question format, not in statement format. Like just putting a question mark doesn't make it a question. It is a statement actually. It might feel I'm nitpicking or I'm going into grammatical things. It's not about that. It's about a question should be a question. Always think from a psychologist point of view. If you're a psychologist, you're actually developing a questionnaire. Is this how you'll put questions? So always keep the larger picture in mind. It should have been, should more importance be given to mental health. Next is, suggest one weakness of using closed questions to collect data in Yuan study. See, sometimes they're kind enough to tell you Yuan study. Even if they don't say, you have to always refer to the scenario. That's why they're giving you. Here she has mentioned that the weakness of using closed questions that participants can't express complete opinions and in-depth data can't be collected. Now one thing is, if they don't mention in the question, you don't refer to the study, which is wrong. But when explicitly they are telling you refer to the study and still you are not referring to it, the question is why? Okay, it's most probably you haven't practiced enough, you don't know how to write these answers. So what you have learned in the textbook, you're just writing. Again, the point is generally correct, that people can't express themselves completely on closed questions. When it comes to Yuan study, it's about attitudes to mental health. So definitely people might want to elaborate more on what exactly they think about mental health, which they will not be able to do because only closed questions are being used. That is how you have to explain. In fact, these type of answers which are in continuity or parts, you can always take the previous one as an example to illustrate your point, definitely. So supposing we are asking a question like, should more importance be given, and they're answering in yes or no, they might want to elaborate on why they think more importance should be given. So again, that also can be taken here as a continuity example. If they are continuing the question, you can also continue the example. And you can say that this is the reason why, to make it even more specific. Next, there was suggest 2 advantages for Yuan of using an interview in his study rather than a questionnaire. So first one she's given is, interview can let no collected in-depth data when compared to questionnaire. Something is off with the wording, or I'm reading incorrectly, maybe because of the handwriting. But the point she's trying to make is more in-depth data can be collected, which is right. Only thing is, when you say on interview in-depth data can be collected, you have to mention, because generally open questions will be asked. Automatically using an interview does not result in in-depth data, because if on an interview I'm using only closed questions, there is no in-depth data. So this is incomplete. Even the general point here is incomplete. Second, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say that only. Where is the mention of Yuan study in the answer? Next point given is, the participants explain their behavior and try to justify their opinion. Basically saying they get freedom to express more. For the first point, definitely I'm not going to give any credit, because like I said, it's incomplete. The second is correct, they can justify or explain themselves, but there's no relevance to Yuan study. So totally only 1 mark for this point. First of all, when we say that in-depth data can be collected, again we have to mention for attitudes to mental health by asking open questions. In the paper, firstly, already the March paper is there. You can see in that this type of question is less likely to come because it's too repetitive. Like I pointed out earlier, the previous one was also all about questions. This one also, so much repetition will not be there. So it's seeming like every answer is the same. Still, what we have to see is, even if it's repetitive, we have to keep on mentioning in-depth data about attitudes to mental health. We do have to refer to Yuan's study. Secondly, even for this point, they can justify their opinion. We could explain with an example. So, for example, if someone says no, attitude to mental health is not good or it needs to be improved, they could explain further and say what they think about the present state of mental health or what they would like to see in the future in people's attitudes of mental health. Something like that you have to explain. Amongst other strengths that you could give for interview over questionnaire is because it's real-time interaction. Body language can be observed. So if people are lying and this issue is sensitive of attitude to mental health, people might just try to sound as if they're very supportive, like try to show social desirability. Then the interviewer can catch these type of attempts on the respondent's part. So something like that definitely you can explain. Next is Yuan is going to use opportunity sampling, and we have to give one weakness of using opportunity sampling. It can be a biased sample, as researchers might try to choose more suitable participants. Very vague answer. Very again, biased sample part is correct, unrepresentative or biased, but the moment you attach it with something like they will try to choose more suitable participants, like even though you're not the examiner, the question that will come to your mind, who is more suitable, or who are these people who are being referred to. So this is not the way of writing at all, leaving some idea incomplete, giving some point but not explaining what it is, like not giving examples. So yes, it can result in a biased sample. Perhaps there could be too many people with favorable attitude to mental health. We can give an example also. Say for example, he surveys amongst psychologists, so maybe most of them will have favorable attitude towards mental health, or psychology students. So that would result in a biased sample, because not everyone in the population will have favorable attitudes like these psychology students or psychologists. So that way you could explain it. Okay, so why it would be biased, what would be unrepresentative? One thing you should know, because students don't go in the depth of the concepts, many times they don't realize when it comes to things like opportunity sampling, like I'm just giving a tip, it's not always unrepresentative. See, there are some topics which are universal in nature. I know this is not to do with what we are doing right now. I'm just telling you, as a student of psychology, you should know. There are some topics like which are universal, like I was saying, like say how people's brain works, general working, not people who have undergone accidents, normal usual working of the brain, or certain cognitive processes like memory capacity, duration. Those type of things, even if you study using opportunity samples, it's not a very big issue, because most people's brain works similarly. Like I said, there's not much influence of culture. Those things are universal. Whereas when it comes to social phenomena, like when we say attitudes to mental health, it's social, it's psychological, how people are perceiving mental health around them or in society. Their opportunity samples are a problem. Why? Because it's going to be different with different people, what opinions they have. They're highly subjective type of issues. So if you put in the effort to understand a little more on why opportunity sampling is unrepresentative, it is very helpful, not just to answer these type of questions, but to develop an interest in psychology also. I see many students are uninterested in the subject. I see many parents call me and tell me that's their major complaint, student is not interested at all, because you never understand the logic or the rationale behind anything, so it doesn't seem interesting. But when you think of, okay, why is opportunity sampling not representative, what is the problem, in which cases it can be, which cases it cannot be, when you deal with every concept to grasp the meaning rather than just knowing what it is or just memorizing 1 or 2 points associated with it, then you can develop an interest in the topic. So try to take it that way, and definitely one byproduct is, yes, answer writing will become better, especially if you want to pursue psychology further. Though I don't agree with the concept that only if you want to pursue further then only you should learn the subject. Well, anyways, you should learn any subject you're doing well. Knowledge is never wasted, it's always an asset. Still, if you're interested in doing psychology further, then all the more you should be interested in these type of understandings or rationale, rather than just knowing superficially what the concepts are, or to just know them for exam requirements. Okay, with that, that's all I'm doing in today's video. One last question is left on designer study. That takes a little more time also to discuss, so I'll make a separate video on it. Today I'm ending the class here. Bye.